Hi, good evening. My name is Gaurav. I haven't introduced myself like this in a long time, but there is always great pleasure in saying I'm 96 B3A7 175. I'll try and keep it as fast as possible. I know we're going late. So ISDN is now about four years old, and it's been quite a remarkable journey for us. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'll actually be involved in setting up an educational institution, in actually trying to set up an entirely new area of study and work, and we call it development, leadership, and management. And over the next 10 odd minutes, I'll try and very quickly take you through some of the thought processes that we went through, and what our journey really was, what our struggles were, what our challenges were, and what we are doing today, and what I think potentially we want to do in the future. We're really young, we're really an infant right now, just about 4 years old. So, maybe I need to manage this as well. So, over the last 70 years, the world's GDP has increased about 7-8 times. The entire world, on average, maybe 10 times, I don't know the exact number. And the world's population has increased just 3 times. That means, and we're all engineers here, on an average, per capita's income has increased by 3 to 4 times. Yeah, we have many more children going to school today. We have many fewer children dying of diseases today. By estimates of a lot of study, the extent of people living below $1.9 a day has gone down significantly from the 90s. So it seems like really, really good news. And yet we've heard so many people here say why things are so bad and how, we really need to change the way we live and the way we act. So why is that? And, sorry, can you help me with this? Next slide. So why are we talking more and more about the need for responsible leadership today, despite all of these large macro level changes? Changes? You'll have to be with me. Next one. Why? Because despite all of that, even today, 1% of the world's population owns more wealth than the balance 99%. And that's stark. That is stark. All of us here have been taught that if growth happens, and growth is this everlasting phenomena that will keep happening, if it keeps happening, trickle down will happen and everyone will benefit. Well, clearly not everyone, at least not in reasonable proportions. Second, even today, 1 out of 9 people in the world go to sleep hungry. And this can be solved by using just 10% of the food that we waste on a daily basis. 1 out of 4 people live on less than $3 a day. That's less than what we pay to get here from the airport. So how, despite this phenomenal growth that we've never seen in human civilization, ever, how is it that we have so many people living in such deprivation? So a lot of people tell me that, so what's the problem? I mean, people are improving, right? Lives are improving. Why are you cribbing about the fact that the pace is slow? And we get it. We get there, as more and more growth happens, we'll get there. So there are 2 problems with that argument. The first problem is what I call the equity, equality, and fairness issue. So when are we ever going to get there? It's a question of time. How long do crores and crores and billions of people continue to live in that deprivation? That's a equity question and a fairness question. The bigger question is that of planetary boundaries. I think increasingly now we are realizing that growth will not happen perennially. We live on a finite planet with finite resources. This entire idea, we've all studied economics at some point, I think, at least many of us would have. If you ever remember the GDP growth curve, or the growth curve will always be going up like this. It doesn't have an ending. Right? So as economists, we haven't figured what the ending point of this GDP growth curve is. It's some illusionary world we are living in. We're realizing that we live in a finite planet with finite resources, and this is not going to happen. So that realization then brings into question the entire leadership and management paradigm that has been guiding this growth, and therefore underlines the importance of a new kind, of a new paradigm, of a new brand, of a new mantra of leadership and management that is really required for the world. And in some ways, I think that realization was a really hard-hitting realization that we need to change the way we are living and we need to change the way we exist. Well, that left us with three questions. One, where do we start? Two, what kind of leadership do we need? And three, how do we go about creating it? The first realization on the question of where we start was, you cannot change things by fighting the existing reality. To change things, build a new model that will make the existing model obsolete. Criticizing endlessly never works because people always are looking for an alternative. And the second realization was that the only sector which is working exclusively and dedicatedly and committedly to solving the issues that we saw in the previous slide, whether of health, education, poverty, hunger, malnutrition, social issues, etc., is the social sector. And we said logically in our minds, and out of the four people who started ISDM, three are engineers. BITS, IIT Kanpur, and BHU, IT BHU now. So logically, we said it has to start with the social sector, and a new model of leadership needs to emerge in the sector, which plays an extremely evangelizing role in making this happen. Next. Next question was, what kind of leadership? Clearly, the current kind of leadership, and I'm not criticizing it, I think every kind of leadership or management evolves in a certain context, and it's really, really important in that context. I also believe, and have come to believe, that every kind of leadership at some point will become obsolete. So maybe today, the kind of leadership that we have been practicing, which is based on just the narrow idea of profit, of growth, and growth of a particular kind, of returns to a very small segment of people that we call shareholders, etc., maybe needs to be relooked. And we've been talking to hundreds and thousands of people across the spectrum. So people from the corporate sector, people from CSR, people from the social space, academicians, researchers, bureaucrats. The first 6 months of our journey at ISDM, beginning of 2016, we spent just talking to people, sharing our idea and getting feedback. And people, and with that, I think intuitively we started developing a sense of the kind of leadership we feel is important. So one, really that leadership or management has to be based on an understanding of how society works. None of our management schools today spend time in actually developing that understanding. If I don't understand how society works, or if I don't understand what development really means beyond economic development, how am I even going to envision what I want to do in any sphere that I want to work? So development really needs to be looked at through multiple lenses. We look at it through market lenses. We also need to look at it through gender lenses, welfare lenses, human rights lenses, ecology, increasingly ecological development lens, etc. Second, I think many people have talked about it on panels today, is we need to reevaluate the values on the basis of which we are looking at leadership and management. Is growth, profit, efficiency, standardization, effectiveness the only principles and values? Or we need to start envisioning society a little bit differently? So understanding the kind of society that can exist based on things like equity, equality, fairness, compassion, justice, has to be one of the underpinnings of a newer thought around leadership. A lot of people say that the issue today is not of scarcity, but the issues of redistribution. And therefore it's a design problem. And a design problem which has been created by us over the last hundreds of years, and if it's been created by us, it can be remedied by us over the next few hundred years as well. Third, leadership which is based on an understanding of open systems. Because all work in society happens in open systems which are complex, ambiguous, emergent, and really wicked. The very famous line which says that the solutions of today tend to become the problems of tomorrow. And that happens a lot because we think in silos. And therefore a lot of our solution analysis and problem analysis and solutions happen in silos. And lastly, I cannot fathom working on any social issue in a competitive mode. And we continue to do that. We continue to compete with each other. So I will compete with Mayur because we are fighting for the same pot of gold. And I'll either go to me or I'll go to Mayur. It can never work. Mayur and I independently of each other, and Rakesh sir, and many other people, and Venkat, we cannot solve society's issues working and competing with each other, working in silos. Lastly, the last question is, how do we go about creating it? So, as engineers, very, very process-driven people, the first solution that we had was, let's create a great program. If there's a problem, we're figuring out the solution. Let's create this world-class educational program, get people from everywhere to come and teach. We'll have great students, we'll go on and do great work. People actually told us, your hypothesis is correct, but your solution sucks. If you really want to change society and you want to change leadership and management in society, you cannot do it by creating a program. And what people were saying was that you actually need to start creating an entire ecosystem of change in which the program that you offer, and currently we're offering a 1-year full-time postgraduate program in development leadership, is only one part of the story. And in our minds, the program went from being an end in itself to being the means towards a larger end. And these are three big areas of work that we engage in today. One is we've set up a research center to help create an entirely new body of knowledge for leadership and management in the development sector. And that's one of the biggest areas of work for ISDM over the years to come. Is how do we work with practitioners? How do we do research on the ground? How do we theorize on experience and create this body of knowledge for development management? Towards that, and with that in mind, we've started actually collaborating with universities across the world. We are part of a project where Stanford and University of Virginia and Mondragon from Spain are participating. We've started doing sector-level studies to understand what leadership really, what the needs are, sector-level studies to understand talent and its needs in this space. We've started working with social sector organizations to develop case studies, because a lot of management education has happened through case studies. So a lot of work has happened in this space. Second, we started doing a lot of work around what we call evangelization. And people said, you can do whatever you want in isolation, unless the people you're working with are part of your journey, you can have no hope of any change. So a lot of platforms are being created to get people to collaborate, to get people to talk to each other, to get people to ideate together, and to get people to understand why development management is important. In fact, next week on the 1st of February, we celebrate what is called Development Management Day. It's a day that we have chosen to celebrate development management. It's a day we are working towards institutionalizing over years to come. I invite all of you, in case anyone is in Delhi next week, do reach out to me. We have a wonderful and a beautiful event on the 1st of February where Ms. Aruna Roy, Mr. Salil Shetty are coming, amongst many other things that's going to happen. So I'll share my contact details after this. Please, all of you are invited. And lastly, we are working on a lot of programs for what we call proof of concept. So our 1-year postgraduate program, 2 batches have graduated, about 120 people have graduated, and they are working across the spectrum of social sector organizations. The 3rd batch has close to 80 students. So by June of this year, 200 ISDM students would be out in the sector and working in various different organizations, bringing about impact for the next 30 years of their life. We started working with mid to senior level professionals through exec education. We do both open workshops and custom workshops, trying to start conversations with current decision makers and influencers on how we can make that happen. So 3 areas of work for us. I want to leave you with 2 last thoughts. One, besides what I've just talked about, I look at ISDM as 2 big opportunities for us as well. One, we see it as an opportunity to transform higher education. Higher education really needs a lot of thinking and thought. And there are various elements of which that we have started work on. One, a lot of higher education institutions today have become institutions for transmission of knowledge. Higher education is not meant for that. Higher education is meant to create new knowledge. And that's a big, big focus. A lot of higher education institutions in India have lost that focus. Second, the role of students is not just as receivers of information and knowledge, but they have a key role to play in actually co-creating new knowledge. And that's another big change that's happening at ISDM. Third, the role of practice and practitioners in actually, actually coming and teaching people is something we truly believe in. We need to move out from a purely theoretical frame of education into something which is more practical. Four, higher education institutions need to open their doors and walls. We become very, very siloed. We need to become much more porous. We need to collaborate. We need to talk to each other and actually make things happen. So one of the things we've decided at ISDM is whatever knowledge we create, whatever we do, is all open source. There is no question of IP at all. Everything that we do is available for anyone in this world to use free of cost. And lastly, and I call this in some ways democratizing this entire process, is most educational institutions in India, including my alma mater, have been either set up by the government, which is my MBA institution, IMCAL, or by large industrialist families. In our mind, ISDM is an experiment to see whether the common man, and all of us are common people, can actually set up a world-class educational institution. And right now, we are actually being funded by a variety of different kinds of people. We are a not-for-profit social enterprise to make this dream happen. So how do you democratize setting up of higher education in a way that you're moving away from one influence? This was one point that I want to leave you with. And the last point really is, we've lost the race to be able to create the world's best engineering college. We've lost out on the race to create the world's best MBA institution. But we are very much in contention to create the world's best development management institution. And that's an opportunity that excites us. And that's an opportunity that keeps us awake at night. And I want to leave you all with these two thoughts. Thank you so much for your time. I invite you to join us on this journey and collaborate with us. Thank you so much.